They once implemented a rule to match cars, especially water ones, to a template. This is the formula used by Mercedes-AMG, Porsche, Maserati, BMW, Aston Martin, Lamborghini and Audi, and Ferrari bypassed it and didn't buy it. So the Purosangue, its first SUV, uses a 715 horsepower naturally aspirated 6.5-liter V12 and a rear-mounted dual-clutch transmission. Power to the front axle is provided by a separate 2-speed transmission, which is active only in conjunction with the first 4 gears of the rear axle. The rear doors are rear-hinged and electrically operated, offering primo access to a pair of heated, ventilated, massaging rear seats. And the Multimatic has TASV spool valve active dampers, 4-wheel steering and a body with more aero tricks than a Formula 1 car. Ferrari understood that its first SUV had to be something special, and the resulting effort would make a nice companion to the other exotics living in a certain garage, valet line, or secret underground lair. I'd like to point out that some of you might say there was some parts off-the-shelf engineering at play with Purosangue, but when the parts come from an 812 Superfast that shares Purosangue's dry sump, direct injected F140 V12, it's an acceptable setup. Here, this delicious mill is tuned for lower torque, but it's still good for an 8 revolutions per minute redline. Purosangue's long hood isn't just for stylistic effect. Given the packaging challenges of mounting the transmission in front of the V12, Ferrari claims a 0 to 62 miles per hour time of 3.3 seconds, which, while not conservative, seems plausible. For most cars, a screaming V12 would be the defining piece of hardware, but the Purosangue's engine co-stars with its suspension, which uses 48-volt electric motors at each corner to actively level the body, instead of merely reacting to uneven pavement. The Purosangue's 4 suspension assemblies compare notes every 50 milliseconds to smother bumps by either lifting or lowering each wheel independently. But the system isn't entirely motor-based. The electric motors work in tandem with a traditional spring and damper, so they're not doing all the work, more like providing timely nudges to enhance the returns. It's almost hard to say exactly how well the system works because we have to go to a known path for a frame of reference. Everything is quiet and locked down, so the shock sport setting is mostly performance theater. Even with the suspension in its softest setting, body control is precise. The huge 22 inches front wheels and 23 inches rear wheels feel like BF Goodrich KO2 sidewalls and are also instantly responsive. Since there are no sliding bars, there is no side-to-side rotation of the head. In fact, if Ferrari had programmed it this way, the electric motors would have allowed the Purosangue to bend into corners. Engines work hard enough in everyday driving to require their own heat exchangers and cooling circuits. The hardware is from Multimatic, and while it could theoretically be in other cars, the control software was done in-house by Ferrari engineers, and we're guessing they didn't share the notes. So for now, if you want active suspension, you'll need $402,050 to order Purosangue. That's a $393,350 base price, plus a $5,000 destination charge and a $3,700 gas tax, based on EPA ratings of 12 mpg city and 16 mpg highway. With the engine's torque vectoring, active suspension and 4-wheel steering, the Purosangue manages to feel calm and instantly settled, while retaining the ability to get into corners the moment you turn the wheel. The adaptive rear axle steering system can control each wheel independently by up to 2 degrees. So, for example, the outside wheel can help the rear end follow the nose into a corner, and Ferrari adjusts toe under braking and hard acceleration to ensure stability. At low speeds, such as in a parking garage, the instrument cluster's camera display shows green markings that predict your steering path, including one for the inside rear wheel to remind the driver that steering is behind them. This phalanx of hardware and software works so harmoniously that you rarely remember the hideous complexity that goes on behind the scenes. The ones and zeros spinning through all the wires, the clutches slipping and the gears connecting together under the floor on the right side. Moments. It all adds up to a big, fast car that looks good in just about anything. The only time you're reminded of Purosangue's extensive catalog of sophisticated systems is when you have to interact with some of them via the steering wheel, which is where Ferrari has seen fit to place all the controls. Ferrari has crammed so many knobs, buttons and tactile touchpads into the front of the steering wheel that it's running out of space, and the controls have spilled over behind it too. You need to locate a small button on the steering wheel to change the audio source. The right steering wheel speaks, and this knob is located next to the track selector switch, which is just a finger's reach from the right shift paddle. The right turn signal button and the haptic pad cluster display and menus that control the instrument. Wiper and washer activation button, a wiper settings button and a Manatino lever that controls drive modes and suspension settings. What if I accidentally touch that haptic pad going into turn 3 at Imola? You ask, good question. Ferrari expected this, so these buttons don't respond until you double tap them, thereby signaling intent. We will tell you about the left side of the steering wheel later if we have time. The only physical control on the dash is a circular knob for the climate control system. It's the same as the dash, but it goes off when you touch it. You then access the settings by turning the knob and tapping its small touchscreen to activate the seat heaters, such as the massage function. To the left and right of the button are a few more haptic controls hidden behind the glass that control specific functions like the rear window defroster and suspension lift. The only large touchscreen is in front of the passenger seat, deliberately out of reach of the driver, and it provides the kind of screen you'd find in the center of the dash, where there's room to type in the word shiatsu and massage. Options or display covers for your Def Leppard Greatest Hits playlist. The rear seats, which instantly clear the low bar of best back seats ever in a Ferrari, are accessed via power-operated rear hinge doors that operate completely independently of the front doors. To open one from the outside, you pull and hold a small lever along the bottom of the window that will look familiar to anyone who's driven a Ford Mustang Mach-E, a cohort that evidently doesn't include anyone at Ferrari. A button on the B-pillar closes the doors. This is the kind of cool trick you can include when you don't really care about weight. Ferrari quotes a dry weight of 4482 pounds in the lightest configuration, but the reality is more like 480 pounds, which still makes for a fine power-to-weight ratio, but only because there's so much power. There's a launch control position for the stubby metal console shift lever, but no track setting on the Manatino. The various aerodynamic tricks, underbody diffuser, air curtains to keep airflow attached to the side of the car, hidden ducts and channels in the bodywork, are optimized for cooling and drag reduction rather than ground-hugging downforce. Ferrari resisted the temptation to build a jacked-up F8 Tributo, and that was the right call.